Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Monte Belmonte.
And I'm Kristin Smith. We're in the midst of our spring fund drive, and we got a great text from Lynn Perna of Marlborough, Vermont. So happy to find Monte and Kristin. I am streaming from Vermont. Love giving up Terry Gross at 3 o'clock as a longtime VPR listener. Want you to know I'm making a mail-in contribution just because of the Fab 413. Oh.
Hey, thanks, Lynn. You can donate at anypm.org right now, but then text us to tell us that you made a donation at 1-800-639-9120. Later this week on the show, we're really excited to welcome our Tanglewood correspondent for the year, hopefully, Boston Pops conductor Keith Lockhart. That's Thursday.
And later in the show, women's basketball past and present with the head coach of the Sweet 16-bound Smith College basketball team.
And Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid asks, is space for everyone?
It should be. But first...
Today begins what we are calling the Great Western Mass Pizza Quest. Should we come up with like an intro sounder for it?
We probably should, yes.
Pizza Quest!
Where indeed, in the 4 counties of our state of Massachusetts, is the good pizza?
This was an idea Khalees had where we could reach out to you, the listener, where you would tell us where the best pizza is in the 4 counties of Western Mass.
And it started because I lived in East Hampton and was sorely disappointed by most of the supply.
We know that we have some listeners in Connecticut, and we love you, and we love your New Haven pizza.
New Haven pizza is, outside of Neapolitan pizza, the best pizza in the country.
So all pizza from Connecticut is disqualified.
Yes.
This has gotta be...
The style itself is not, and we will get into that.
The first logical place for us to go for the Great Pizza Quest is right down the street from New England Public Media at the Red Rose in Springfield. Khalees, you've been here.
I have not been inside here. I have gotten pizza from here, but that was during my move to Springfield, and so let's just pretend I have a clean slate.
And I have never been here, and we've brought an amateur pizza expert with us who we'll introduce you to as we enter the Red Rose.
It's just back 6 7.
Here we go. It smells like pizza. On your left as you go in, you can see all of the people making the pizza. It's a pretty incredible scene here. The dining room is huge and sprawling. Beautiful view of Main Street.
There you go, guys.
What we're aiming to do is you, the listener, email us at thefab413 at anypm.org.
Or send us a text at 800-639-9120.
Anytime, and you tell us where your favorite pizza is in the 4 counties of Western Mass, and we will try to go there, and we will try to take you out. I mean, not like at the knees.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
I mean, take you to the pizza place, and you can tell us why. So this is like, we're totally stealing from the Phantom Gourmet. They do not know we're here doing this. We're just doing it of our own accord.
Even though we have this giant recorder at the table.
But we could be, who knows what we could be doing.
Fair enough.
We don't have like an NEPM flag, as they call it, on the microphone. And we decided to bring with us our good buddy from our time at our previous radio station, who has now moved on to work with the work that he went to school to do with HAP Housing. Is that what it's called now?
No, Wayfinders.
Oh, with Wayfinders. I knew it was like, I knew they changed it.
It's only been about 5 years.
Yeah, you know. I'm a slow learner. With Wayfinders. Hello. Good, how are you? Mark Latanzi from Wayfinders, working right down the street in Springfield. Mark Latanzi is the best amateur pizzaiolo I know, and you're a former restaurateur yourself.
True, long time ago, but yes, I had a cafe in the 90s in Greenfield, Green River Cafe, for anyone who remembers it. We did not make pizza.
Right.
The pizza passion, I guess that's my pandemic obsession.
And you
is
grew
the
up
pizza.
nearish to New Haven, so you grew up around the greatest pizza.
Yeah, my entire family was from New Haven. You know, my mother and sister live outside of Hartford, but New Haven pizza was always what we got when we visited the grandparents, and thankfully there are enough of those style joints up in the Hartford area that we can get it there too.
So I think we should come up with rules.
Okay.
We should probably get the same pizza at every place.
I agree.
Should it be like half cheese? Because cheese is like the vanilla of pizza and kind of is like the way to decide what good pizza is?
Yes.
And then should we do like the other half a topping and always get the same topping? Or what should we do?
I think it should be something like that. I'm kind of the mind that pizza in general should not have more than 3 toppings on it.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's classics, right, that everyone likes and expects. Sausage with a vegetable or 2, a plain pie. Those are kind of the benchmarks, I think.
Yeah. Plain pie is by far the bench.
Yeah.
And then we see how you do with toppings, because sometimes we've experienced pizzas where they just don't understand how toppings work and it's all sad.
Or what if you take a classic topping like pepperoni? Like, should there be a universal pepperoni standard?
Right. Does a cup? Does it lie flat?
Yeah.
These are the things people obsess about.
So we could go and get a half cheese and half pepperoni pizza everywhere, or something else. What do we think?
I'm pro that, yeah. I'm pro cup.
Pepperoni cup.
Right.
Are we limited to like one pie? I mean, what are we talking about here? What's the budget?
We're going to try to keep it a reasonable lunch budget. I mean, we are public media.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well,
We don't have to go to the listeners to support our pizza addiction.
That's right.
I mean,
This
we are in the
pizza's-
middle of the fun drive.
This pizza is brought to you by Agnes from Greenfield.
Thank you for underwriting our pizza,
Thank you for
Agnes.
underwriting our pizza ads. Here's a sweatshirt. You can come with us with pizza next time.
Yeah, there you go. But I also, one of my benchmarks is also like the vegetables and how are they treated. Like some go on raw at automatic, that's fine. But like mushrooms from a can, mushrooms fresh, mushrooms sauteed first.
Yep.
I like sauteed first. I'm going to say that's my bias. That's a lot more prep work. I don't know that everybody's going to do that.
Yeah. My thing with toppings, and I feel like we need a cheese pizza and we need a topping and pizza. Toppings are always contentious, right? Like, not everybody likes mushrooms. Not everybody likes onions. Don't put pineapple on my pizza.
Correct, 100% all the time.
Too much flavor awesomeness can't overpower your battery, can it?
Dude, this is pineapple.
Try before you deny.
Pineapple's out.
Pineapple is definitely out.
There's a size question, too, right? Because no matter where you go, and I stick by this terrible, I will die on this hill, party pizzas are the worst. Like, the bigger the pizza is, the harder it is to do well.
What do you think, amateur pizzaiolo?
I think there's a point to which, unless you have a beautiful oven and a lot of room, where that becomes more of it gets a little underdone,
Yeah.
It's hard to maneuver. That said, there is a pizza to dollar ratio that I've seen mathematically proven that you always need to order a large. If you buy a small, your cost per bite is dramatically higher.
I agree.
So let's get a large, half cheese, quarter pepperoni, quarter veggie if the lettuce. Mark Latanzi, you pick the veggie.
Oh God. Well,
Or we
I'm
could just do veggie.
gonna pick mushrooms.
Okay, I'm for it.
All right. Or we could do pepperoni and mushrooms.
Sure.
All right, that's it.
All right. So the rule is what? Half cheese, half pepperoni, mushroom across the board everywhere.
Now everywhere going forward, that's it.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Let's put in the order. The pizza has arrived here at Red Rose in Springfield, and the large pizza is oval, which is interesting. I don't see a lot of oval pizzas.
Yes. Yeah, I agreed. This is larger than I was expecting.
It's very large.
Square slices.
How do you feel about that?
I'm okay with square slices.
Yeah.
No, should have asked for triangle. We forgot.
We're not going to get
Can
them
you
with an
request
oval.
triangle?
I think any pizza joint you can request triangle. I've certainly done it. I like triangles.
I do too, actually.
I do too.
But if
I
you
don't-
tried to cut an oval into a triangle, it would be
That's
very
what I'm-
weird. It'd be
Yeah,
like,
it's-
it's like the
I want-
Picasso of pizza.
And they're clearly committed to the oval because the tray it's on is oval.
Right.
It's not just like an oval pie on a round tray. They're all in on ovals.
Yes.
Luckily, the shape doesn't affect the taste. Now, my biggest mistake that I usually make with pizza is digging right in because I'm so hungry, and then burning my mouth and then not enjoying food for the next week. I'm not going to make that mistake.
So we have a tiny bit of curl on the pepperoni, like a little bit. We've got canned mushrooms.
Yes, mushrooms from a jar.
Okay.
All right.
Latanzi's digging in.
Look at
He's looking at crust.
Looking across.
I'm looking at the
We're looking
undercarriage,
for
right?
spots.
Give me your crust.
You got some
Crust
spot.
assessment.
You got some spotting. You got a nice tan crust underneath. with
You
some
want
spotting.
some spotting in your opinion.
You want some, and if
Yeah.
you're like hardcore about it, you want some burn, some char.
Right. The hotter the oven, like the coal ovens of New Haven Pizza,
Yep.
or the wood-fired ovens that people love, that
Yes.
makes the crust crackery.
Yeah, and it's also about the hydration level of the dough, which is getting way too geeky. But yeah, you can tweak your dough recipe to encourage more of that char. This has got the cornmeal on the bottom. That's going to be nice and crunchy.
But you do, like, the char also helps with, like, structure in general, like picking up a slice no matter the size. Like, more of those spots will mean that you can hold it without it flopping over and just dying in your hand.
Yeah, you don't want the flop.
But there's also, I have to say, nice browning on the cheese.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
like that.
oh, absolutely.
Yes. That doesn't always happen, but it should happen.
Yep.
Yeah. The pepperoni at least appears to be kind of like your conventional, you bought it out of a bag at a store pepperoni, as opposed to some super fancy,
Like
grown
the-
on a farm in Vermont
Yeah.
pepperoni. And,
Yeah, this is not the cupping style hipster pepperoni that you're going to get at some pizza joints.
I love cupping hipster pepperoni.
Welcome
That's
to
my new-
NPM.
All right, here we go. You've taken the first bite, Latanzi.
Still too hot.
Damn it, I hate waiting.
I'm so hungry though.
Me too. First bite, Khalees, thoughts?
The cheese is nice. I haven't gotten to any of the other important bits, but the cheese is nice.
Right.
It is too hot still to do the other parts.
I'm going to wait so that my first bite is a true impression and not like on the cusp of danger impression.
So the sauce is very oregano heavy.
Yeah, it's a cooked sauce too, which is fine. Most pizza joints use a cooked sauce, and definitely has the high oregano profile, but it's tasty enough.
It's so oregano-y that it tastes not tomato-y. Sometimes I think the sauce is too sweet. Sometimes it's this perfect balance of like Regina in the North End. Their sauce is this perfect sweet savory balance. That's what I like best about that pizza. This red rose. I'm liking the cheese and the crust. The sauce, too oregano-y, in my opinion.
I think that for the pepperoni and mushroom version of this, the mushrooms definitely balance out the oregano heaviness, but I will also say you can't rely on toppings to fix the problems in your sauce.
And the oregano gives it like a heat. I don't have any red pepper flakes on it yet, and it's spicier than I'm used to for most pizza. I love spicy, so it doesn't bother me, but I can imagine people would eat this and think it's spicy.
Right.
They'd be wrong.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a classic red sauce. There's nothing super remarkable about it.
This is a remarkably Greek sauce for an Italian place, eh?
I know. Well, the dominant pizza style in Western Mass is
Greek-style
style
pizza.
Which I'm not opposed to. I like it. Yeah.
No, and it's something.
Most of your house of pizzas are Greek-style pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. In certain, it hits the spot.
I mean, look, even though I grew up eating the New Haven style in our hometown in East Granby, Connecticut, it was a Greek pizzeria. We went there tons more times than I had New Haven pizza growing up. It's fine. It does have the roof of cheese, the thicker crust.
Oregano in the sauce.
Yeah, it's iconic in its own way. I think overall, can we go overall?
Yeah.
I like the crust. I like the color on the crust. I like the crispiness on the bottom. It's got a nice edge to it, and it's fluffy in the right places and sturdy in the other places. And the cheese is too much and kind of unremarkable. Sorry.
Overall,
It's a little heavy on the cheese side. I don't mind that necessarily. I think it's less of a problem on the cheese side than it is on the topping side. I think that the crust is okay. The sauce is a little oregano heavy in a way I'm not so sure about. And canned mushrooms will never be my favorite, but they work in this case.
And I think with the cheese, we have to expect every pie is going to be like this. And maybe it's an unfair standard. Maybe it's my standard, that we should not judge it too, because I don't like a roof of cheese, but I know a lot of people love that. And a lot of pizza joints do that because that's what the customers expect.
it's so not New Haven. Doing it that way, and the type of mozzarella that the New Haven pizza uses is usually much different, like a fresh mozzarella. I don't mind the roof of cheese. It feels like a Pizza House kind of.
If you have this much sauce, you have to have a roof of cheese.
Yeah. I don't mind this pizza at all. I'd even say it's pretty good.
Totally. Crust is great.
I love the ambiance in here.
Oh my
The
God.
chandeliers, the stone lions coming in, and these gorgeous arched windows where you can see everybody making the pizza. The bar on the other side. This feels super like old school Italian Springfield, South End kind of situation.
Absolutely. It's an iconic place for a reason.
Right.
It's the ambiance, it's the service, it's the history. All comes together.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we have like Chianti and baskets?
I mean, we got a show to do, or else I definitely would have. I haven't perfected day drinking on the new gig yet, but I'll get there.
So I feel like the last bit of this, because you can't really like finish your ruling without talking about the half-life of pizza, which is how good your pizza is as it cools down inevitably from the molten hot you initially got it to the stone cold you should never eat it at.
I like pizza for breakfast cold.
Look, I understand that there are a lot of you out there who really enjoy cold pizza. I am not, and probably will never be in your number. But some cold pizza is definitely better than others. So I feel like part of our criteria should be, how good is this at room temperature? And I'm not so sure.
It's not getting better as it cools down.
Right.
There are definitely some pizzas you gotta get like warm or within the first like few minutes out after it's like tolerable. And this seems to be one of those pizzas.
Right. Or it's a candidate for reheating next day, but not cold, because only a heathen would do that.
And not in your microwave, damn it.
No.
Stop.
No.
We're unanimous. We're
You
unanimous
can
on that.
disagree with me on everything I say, but please take this lesson. Do not microwave your pizza. Don't do it. Just don't.
Red Rose in Springfield, our first stop on our Western Mass pizza quest. Who do you think has the best pizza in Western Mass? Email us at thefab413@nepm.org.
Or text us at 1-800-639-9120, and maybe we'll explore your favorite pizza place with you next time. Julie O'Connor from Hatfield writes, best pizza is at Vegan Pizza Land pop-ups.
And we got an email suggestion. Best pizza, our favorite is Family Pizza Europa on Sumner Ave in Springfield. We love Red Rose too, but Family tends to be a bit more convenient for us. We've grown quite fond of it. Thanks so much for all you do. Like eating pizza? Keep the shows coming. Your friends Jen, Dave, Gilbert, and Daisy Vose in Springfield, Mass.
It is a community service. Coming up, talking about the success of our 5 college teams when it comes to women's basketball with Smith College head Lynne Hersey.
And Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid on whether or not space is for everyone.
All coming up in the Fabulous 413.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Some kitchen table astronomy here in Amherst with Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid. Mr. Universe, you were just part of a conference that begged the question, is space for everybody?
Yes, so I was at the annual meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, AAAS. It was in DC. The organization, as the name says, sort of like, it's about the promotion of science, advancement of science. But this one the theme was science for society. Mm-hmm. I was there in particular to attend some sessions which dealt with ethics of space. One was about Artemis diplomacy. So Artemis is the program for the moon that the NASA is sort of
Artemis,
leading.
the twin sister of Apollo, an all-female mission to the moon that's being planned.
Right, and the session on Artemis diplomacy was very official.
Yeah.
So meaning to say there was no real ethics part. It was like, well, we have set things right and so forth. Like, we are trying our best, that as long as everybody plays by the rules, I think we'll be good. But of course, these were diplomats, more official, and so you don't get as much out of those kind of sessions as an academic, right? It's like, where's the spicy stuff? But the other session that I went to was organized by a subdivision within the AAAS called DOSER. This is the Dialogue on Science, Ethics, and Religion. And I was on their board for that, and it's a really fascinating one. So they organized a session which was called Is Space for Everyone? And it had interesting scholars in there. One he's a native Canadian indigenous astronomer. His name is Hilding Nielsen. And he talked about why it is so important to bring multiple perspectives, including indigenous perspectives, when we talk about exploring the moon, settling the moon, and so on and so forth, because oftentimes it's about extraction of resources.
Yeah.
And what his point was that, but not everybody thinks like that. I mean, some people believe that land, for example, especially for many indigenous religions in North America, that land is crucial, that you take care of the land. And if you use it, what are you giving back to the land? And that was actually really interesting way he brought that up, and because there was one question, okay, so what would be the indigenous component of that? What would be indigenous astronomy or indigenous way of thinking would be like? That's what he said, that you cannot own that land in particular, but rather you have a relationship with it. And I mean, these are tough questions. I mean, I'm not saying that this is easy, but these are tough questions, and he brought it up. The other really interesting one was by Alyssa Hadaji, who is a space lawyer. And
whoa.
Yeah, she has a degree in space law, and she runs Space Consortium at Harvard and MIT. And she brought up the issue of planetary defense and defense from asteroid threat, for example. And it gets messy very quickly because some of them are using nukes, for example.
Mm-hmm. We just did an experiment, the NASA, to push an asteroid off course to see if we could do that. They just got some of the data back about how much material was lost from that, sending a spacecraft to crash into an asteroid. It was essentially a successful mission, right?
Right, but that was a kinetic one, meaning to say you just slam into an asteroid, right? Mm-hmm. But there are other ideas about having, for example, a nuclear explosion sort of near the asteroid to deflect it.
Mm-hmm. To push it away,
away. The problem is that Outer Space Treaty, which everybody has signed, one of the things is that you cannot use those kind of weapons of mass destruction, for example, in space. Mm-hmm. And so would you violate that in order to what? What would be the state when you go like, you know what, screw the treaty, I'm going to explode it, right?
Yeah.
So she runs these programs where they actually bring in people from various space agencies as well and give them different scenarios, because they're creating a framework in terms of thinking about what if there is a real threat, how would we react to that? So this is one of the questions, right? I mean, like, okay, so this is a violation of an international treaty that you are a signatory to. Are you going to do that? One may think, of course, it's to save humanity. Yeah, but how sure are we that this is going to hit? What would be the damage? So on and so forth. So it actually gets messy pretty quickly.
It's not unlike the movie from last year, Don't Look Up, where the international community had to make these decisions, and they made many of them poorly.
Look, I'm just like all of you. I hope to God that this president knows what she's doing. I hope she's got us all taken care of. But the truth is, I think this whole administration has completely lost their mind, and I think we're all gonna die!
What I thought was fascinating was she talked about, for example, issues of displacement, that usually when there are crises here, you have people go from one country to another, and usually those are neighboring countries. But if you have an asteroid coming in and say, for example, it's not destroying, if it's destroying the entire humanity, well, that's a different scenario, but more likely than not, there can be a size where some parts of the world are going to get destroyed. Well, you cannot just go to the neighboring country. Then the displacement has to be massive. And you can imagine, even if small migrations these days can cause a havoc, what would happen when you have mass scale and much farther off?
Just if you're tuning in, this isn't happening right now. This is all worst-case scenario planning from a conference that Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid just went to.
But this is not the war of the worlds.
Yeah, no.
A humped shape is rising out of the pit. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from the mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on.
So if you're just tuning in the middle of it, this is not an imminent threat right now.
But just to close it down, this loop, because she said that they are doing this interesting scenario this year. And she said that normally they don't announce it ahead of time, but this time they have so people can prepare, these space agency people. And the scenario is such that where you have this asteroid coming in and there is a chance it would hit North America or somewhere in Africa. And so the question is, we don't know yet. Like, so the people are preparing for it. And then it becomes clear that it's going to hit Africa.
That's your dog, Wookie.
Oh, that's right. That's Wookie. So what would you do then?
Right.
I mean, what kind of resources you do? So that's, again, so that brings up class, that brings up sort of like other kinds of issues in terms of privileged countries versus unprivileged, or like, and so on and so forth. So so very interesting conversations, very rich conversations, and it is good to know that people are thinking about these things.
Another thing that came up, I believe, at the same conference is our favorite topic, aliens. This also came up with Colbert on his late night show talking with Steven Spielberg recently about, with all the UAPs, UFOs, Chinese balloons, again, still, people are buzzing about space aliens.
I think that there is something going on that simply needs extraordinary, due diligence. I mean, I would like to hear more about it. I don't know what they are. My imagination and my love for, I don't believe we're alone in the universe.
Right, so I should clarify, because if we say aliens came up at the AAAS meeting...
And AAAS stands for, again, one?
American Association for the Advancement of Sciences.
Got it.
I may never get invited again.
Right.
Okay. Not because they are censoring me, but because there is no evidence for that other than, we've talked about it quite a bit.
Right.
So, and that is precisely what I wanted to talk to you about this, because, so for example, there was one session was about how to report on evidence for life beyond Earth. So there is this session at the AAAS conference where you had one astrobiologist, one journal editor, and one science writer for the Washington Post. And there was a sober conversation about, okay, so how hard it is, how difficult it is to figure out, really, that we have found a microbe which is extraterrestrial, for example, not from here. And they used examples, for example, a famous one, ALH 84001, that was the Martian meteoroid from Mars that was discovered on Earth. And in the mid-90s, people thought, in fact, there was a big press conference by NASA in which they thought they had evidence for ancient life from Mars.
Microbial life.
Not
intelligent life necessarily, not little green men.
And It was a hotly debated issue, and now pretty much most, not everybody, but most scientists believe that it probably was not, that what it was contamination, or those were not life forms. And so this is an interesting case that it was announced that it probably is, right? Life. And then there were other cases. More recently, there was the case of potential detection of phosphine on the planet Venus, in the atmosphere of Venus, and that may have sort of like signified maybe there is life, and so on and so forth. So there were a couple of examples that people used, but they talked about how difficult it is, right? And in fact, one of the astrobiologist, Heather Graham, she talked about that they have a biosignature assessment framework, and there was a full conference on that, like, how would we determine how sure do we have to be, and how do we determine, yes, this is a biosignature of sort of like a microbe from outside the earth, and then how do we disseminate that information? And to me, what was striking was that the disconnect between Spielberg and others. Oh yeah, there's UAPs out, and of course, well, it's really interesting. Like,
yeah, they're probably hiding something. And they're getting ready to tell us something that we're not ready to hear yet.
And they are jumping to Spielberg speculating on maybe it's humans from far future coming back and looking at. I mean, why? I mean, where are we? I mean, forget about that thinking about. Are those UAPs alien spacecraft? That's a huge, gigantic claim, and I know we talked about it last week too, but. I just want to say this is the reason, where there is a whole framework for how sure can we be even when there is a microbe, and it's a very hard problem, and people grapple with that to, I don't understand what this is. It's moving in a different way. Jumping to the conclusion that this is a spacecraft, not just life, an intelligent civilization that has managed to travel sort of like millions or thousands of light years and have come here, and they are hanging out and, just messing with our palates. I thought that was very interesting, that contrast. One thing I brought up, I asked this question, that I consider that as a success story, that despite these claims that make a lot of media hype regarding ALH 84001, the Martian meteoroid, or life on the atmosphere of Venus, or there was a claim for life in the arsenic, and so on and so forth. It gets a lot of headlines, but then it peters out. So I was like, isn't that a success story that actually, if you ask people, do we have evidence of alien microbes? Probably people are going to say no.
Well, scientific people are going to say no. I think you ask your general person on the street, they'll probably have seen one of these headlines and say, yeah, didn't we find life somewhere else?
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I think...
Don't be one of those, listener.
I think there are two different boxes the way people think. One is, okay, what do we know in terms of microbes and things like that? But I think there is a separate way of thinking, separate box that comes in when it comes to UFOs. Like, suddenly it's like the switch is in a different way. But what they were saying, and I think that the most salient point they made was, it's not that it's a binary thing. Oh, we didn't get life. That's it. It's not interesting. Mm-hmm. No! Actually, finding all of these things, the fact that we are debating those questions so close, actually, it gives a lot of information, and it's fascinating. So, for example, ALH 84001, the Martian meteoroid, it gave us a lot of information, including, there are organic compounds there, and there is all of this other studies of there. Sure, ultimately, it wasn't evidence that there was life, but there was a lot of other stuff. So, these are really interesting, informative results, except that in none of these cases there has been life. And that is a good reminder that when you have these kind of announcements in science, that is the beginning of inquiry, not the end. We found life and now we can just sit back. Even with UAPs, even if they were real, and listeners, if is a big thing, that may simply be the beginning of thinking about it, let alone speculating on, they may be humans coming back, or they have this intention, that intention. We cannot say anything because we don't know.
Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hamid, Mr. Universe. One of your other roles is on the board of Amherst Cinema. The Oscars is this coming weekend. Do you have any favorites that you're rooting for?
Oh man, that's and Monte, you and I are going to we may get into a fighting match if I say it what I really want to say.
Go ahead, because I will kung fu fight you.
Yeah, there you go. I think I loved Tar. In terms of thinking about a movie that's sort of like, grand scale, it's a great, rich story.
That's the Kate Blanchett conductor one.
That's exactly right.
You want to dance the mask, you must service the composer. You got to supplement yourself, your ego, and yes, your identity.
So I absolutely loved it, and I think that's really good. Which one are you favoring, Monte?
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
There's a great evil spreading throughout the many-verses. And you may be our only chance of stopping it.
Don't make me fight you. I am really good.
I don't believe you.
It is my favorite movie in a long time. I've watched it 3 times. I love Everything, Everywhere, All at Once about it. It's so good. It's already cleaned up the other award ceremonies, and you didn't love it.
Okay.
Khalees is also gonna kung fu fight you when she hears this.
No, I loved the first half, and then I was just like, okay, now they're just throwing everything but the kitchen sink, and no, actually including the kitchen sink.
Sucked into a bagel.
And it just became just random and okay. I don't want to, because I know a lot of people love it, and I'm not going to spoil it, but it's fine.
Wait a minute, Banshees of Inisherin. I loved it.
I just watched it over the weekend. It was fine.
Oh, come on.
Beautifully
you were
acted.
just getting back at me, for not liking, or for not loving. I actually didn't say I didn't sort of hate it. I just said, it was fine. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, and something else, and all of that stuff. But come on.
Best movie in the last 3 years.
Oh, well, yeah, come on. Okay, but Banshees of Inisherin, good movie about life and death and friendship and all of that stuff, and you have put it in jeopardy now.
Coming up, women's basketball is on fire right now in Western Massachusetts. We'll talk to Smith College head coach Lynne Hersey and Kristin Hughes, director of athletics and recreation at Smith, about the school's connection to the sport's history and what the teams at the 5 colleges are up to as we lope towards the madness that is March.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413. A headline from the weekend Daily Hampshire Gazette: Morgan Morrison's late heroics propels Smith College past St. John Fisher into 3rd consecutive NCAA D3 women's basketball Sweet 16.
Joining us here on the Fabulous 413 is Smith College head coach Lynne Hersey, director of athletics and recreation Kristin Hughes, Ciara Lawrence, sports information director at Smith, Carolyn McDaniel, director of media relations at Smith, and Sam Intrator, Elizabeth A. Woodson, 1922, professor of education and child study, to talk about Smith basketball past and present. That was a long list of people. They're all here.
Yes, and since we know Sam has to go quickly, what I found out just last week, thanks to all of you, was that Smith is where women's basketball was created.
Hey, and thanks for having us. And boy, I've got the great gig because I get to watch the awesome, amazing, extraordinary women's basketball team coached by Lynne Hersey and her coaching staff do really magical things. And as the broadcaster, I feel a special obligation to honor the legacy and the history of Smith College by recognizing the fact that it is not just Ainsworth Gymnasium, but is the Sandra Berenson Gymnasium. And here's why. In 1890, Sandra Berenson goes from Boston to Northampton, becomes the director of physical education, and she gets this sort of story hearing that James Naismith had invented this basketball game down at the Springfield YMCA that involves peach baskets and balls. And she goes to check it out, and she comes back and she says, that game is not just for men, that game's for everybody. And so in 1893, she organizes the very first women's basketball game in our gymnasium. It's the freshmen versus the sophomores. There were like 800 people in the gym, and it was awesome. And from here, at that moment, we are now living into what I think is one of the best stories in sports at any level, and that is our Smith College basketball team. So I'll turn it over to the real people who are at this story, and that is Coach Lynne Hersey, Kristin Hughes, and all of her people.
You had an exciting weekend of play. Give us a rundown of what went on and what's next.
Coach?
Oh,
yeah. Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. That was a great assist, by the way.
Kind of a layup for him. He knows all that stuff.
I know. Totally. Very true. Very true.
Well, that's the first layup I ever hit under pressure. So believe me.
They're hard to do. They're
Yeah.
hard to do when you're right there.
Well, I'd like to echo too. Thank you so much for having us on. It's a real privilege. We had a great weekend in Ainsworth. We were part of the first and second rounds of the NCAA tournament. In our first round, we played SUNY Morrisville. And in our second round, we were fortunate enough to play St. John Fisher. It was a lot of exciting basketball in Ainsworth Gym. Two great teams that came in to compete with us. And, some historic moments for sure. In the first game, we were red hot from the three-point line and finished the game making 23s in that game. So it gave our crowd some excitement that way. And then the second game was pounded inside and a very different way to win the game, but a 1-point victory over St. John Fisher, who was, extremely well coached with a lot of very gifted and talented athletes on their side. So looking forward to the weekend ahead, another big weekend of great basketball and well-coached teams and teams from different regions. So looking forward to it.
Tell us a little bit what happened with that 1-point game the other day. How did it come down to the wire like that?
Yeah, basketball is a game of runs and possessions and how many possessions you're going to get because you have a 30-second shot clock. And so if you're managing a lead or in our case, we were trying to come from behind, the last 2 minutes or last 4 minutes really are pretty critical in sort of the strategic part of the game, how many possessions you can get. And it's all about trying to get defensive stops and being able to score on your offensive end. But Morgan Morrison was in foul trouble for us. She plays a post for us earlier in the game. And in the fourth quarter, we went back to her around 6 minutes left to go. And, the plan was definitely, we felt like we had the best matchup through her. And our guards did a great job getting her a lot of looks, a lot of touches. And she came through for us very big down the stretch. So that in combination of with some of our guard play defensively was really critical too. I mean, we came up with some big steals in 2 possessions leading up to sort of the 5-point push we had to take the lead. So playing both sides of the ball, really important, down stretch.
Now I'm going to make you do just a little bit of technical explaining here for Monte, who doesn't really have a lot of basketball
I don't follow any
knowledge.
basketball of any kind.
Can you explain what foul trouble is?
Yeah, so each player gets 5 fouls. They can be called for 5 fouls throughout the course of a 40-minute game. And so as coaches, when your players get in early foul trouble, so that would be, most of us would consider 2 fouls in the first half, getting to a point where if you catch your 3rd foul in the first 20 minutes, it makes it really hard to play aggressive basketball in this, the last 20 minutes. So that's where we get a little, every coach has a different philosophy, but, we typically try to manage those fouls and allow our players to have a little bit more of an aggressive edge in the second 20 minutes of the game. So that's where you have to be a little bit careful, a little bit strategic about rotations.
Tell us, before we take a quick break here, a little bit about Morgan Morrison and her role on the team. What year is she, and what does she mean to the Smith College team this year?
Yeah, Morgan's a senior for us, and she plays a post player, which is, primarily someone who plays in the paint, back to the basket.
The paint is the part right in front of the net, right?
Yeah, sort of foul line in, and yeah. She's athletic. She's 6'1", really strong, great footwork. Can play through contact. So she's just a player that is really very efficient, an efficient scorer. So she can score a lot of points with minimal touches, and also in a short period of time. So, for instance, she played 25 minutes of a 40-minute game this past Saturday, and she had 24 points and 11 rebounds in 25 minutes. So we're hoping that, we keep her out of foul trouble. She can play 35, and who knows what that will bring for us.
Right.
There's always a troublemaker in the crowd.
I know.
It's usually me.
She's been great. I mean, definitely just an engine for us too, like a real determined scorer, determined defender, just sort of the heart of the team, always ready for the big play, never afraid of the big moment.
Well, coming up, more with Smith College basketball head coach Lynne Hersey and Director of Athletics and Recreation Kristin Hughes. Also, Carolyn McDaniel, Director of Media Relations at Smith, to talk about Smith basketball and maybe some of the other 5 college teams that have been doing particularly well as well.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on NEPM.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. Joining us to celebrate their entrance into the Sweet 16 is Smith College basketball coach Lynne Hersey and Director of Athletics and Recreation Kristin Hughes and Carolyn McDaniel, Director of Media Relations at Smith.
So this is a huge thing. You had a season where you lost one game, which is amazing, but you're a Div 3 school.
You mean only one game?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
that's
lost
great.
the one.
That's amazing.
The one game.
It's not amazing that you lost that game. It's amazing that's the only one.
That's the only one. You're a Div 3 school. Can you talk about the division of those NCAA divisions and how important are Div 3 sports to the schools where they exist?
Sure, I can probably jump in here. I mean, I think
Great.
Division 3 is all about promoting what really would be considered, I think, the truest definition of a student athlete. Something that I think we preach to our teams all the time is that you can be excellent academically and you can be excellent athletically. You don't have to choose one or the other. And, Lynne's team is a great example of that. They had a cumulative team GPA last semester of a 3.75 at one of the elite academic institutions in the country while only losing one game. So that's pretty impressive. And I think that's what makes the experience so special.
I think it's interesting that our new governor, as well as our lieutenant governor, both are collegiate basketball players, or formerly collegiate basketball players. Is that something that the Smith team is acknowledging and thinking about? And does the Smith team, or any of the other, as far as you know, women's basketball teams in the 5 colleges, have a relationship with the governor or lieutenant governor, especially in regards to basketball?
I think Governor Baker has been pretty busy with his Massachusetts constituents, not so many student athletes, but
I meant Maura Healey, the governor.
Yeah.
as well as Kim
Governor
Driscoll.
Healey was she was actually on our campus a few years ago.
Governor Baker is now going to go, former Governor Baker is going to go run the whole NCAA, but Governor Healey and Governor Driscoll were both collegiate basketball players themselves.
Yeah, she was actually on our campus. We got a chance to meet her a number of years ago, and Lynne and I were very happy when we found out that she was a basketball player, because that was what we were able to talk to her about that evening at dinner. So it was actually kind of cool.
We kind of want to talk to her about it too. We've asked her to come and play with us.
Yeah, I want her to give me a tour of the Basketball Hall of Fame because, I'm like I don't really know a ton about basketball, but it's exciting to see what's been going on with Smith. What's the next phase for Smith here? So you've entered the Sweet 16. What happens next? Coach Lynne Hersey?
Yeah, well, we're fortunate enough to host this weekend, so that's a really pretty significant accomplishment. We're down to 16 teams left in the tournament bracket. So we will have 4 of those 16 here at Smith. And the goal, without a doubt, is to win both games and find ourselves in a Final Four. And that's been the goal of this team from day one. We had a lot of players who, during the COVID year, we had the same team together, and a lot of them deferred a year academically. A couple of them decided to take a 5th year and do our master's program here at Smith, so that we could try to stay together and have another opportunity to compete and to, bring Smith's name into the national spotlight. And ultimately, they've done all of that. So the goal, we still have a lot of work to do. We're very well aware of that. It will be a big week of preparation. And we take our preparation really seriously. We work hard and many, many hours of getting prepared for the weekend. But ultimately, I feel like our team will be very locked in and excited for the opportunity. And we won't run from the moment. We're going to run toward it. So looking forward to doing that.
I'm going to take a broad stroke here, and because UMass Amherst has, although they lost their A10 bid like this past weekend, is still like way up there. You're at the top of your division. Can we talk about the importance of women's sports, especially being in perhaps the longest running organized women's sport?
I mean, I think ultimately what basketball or our team and our program try to really promote is that, being part of these experiences really generates a confidence and a self-esteem within our women. And we feel like they're battle tested, they're prepared for challenges that are ahead. And those challenges will come in all different forms in the next 50 working years of their life, and so the ability to be a part of a team, to be under pressure moments, to handle pressure, to be able to multitask like they do in terms of being a student, an athlete, a friend, a daughter, it's all encompassing. And, I think at Smith, we do it the right way. There are no shortcuts to character. There are no shortcuts to integrity. There's no shortcuts to winning. And so you've got to do each phase really well and, have a, great leadership that sort of leads the way. And, I think our players are going to be so impactful in the rest of their lives and whatever they choose to do. And I think the basketball experience, will be a cornerstone that they can lean on moving forward.
We're speaking with Smith College head coach of the basketball team, Lynne Hersey, whose team just made it into the Sweet 16 after a thrilling weekend of basketball. We've got UConn down the street being famous for basketball. And as I just learned last week, and we learned on this show today, women's basketball started at Smith College in the middle part of the 19th century. Do you think
End of the 19th century.
I don't know. I thought he said middle part. I thought he said 1950 something. That's middle to me. Is it drawing basketball players from around the country with the legacy of New England and women's collegiate basketball, and specifically Smith, that has that history where basketball for women started?
Well, during the recruiting process, we certainly make that known. I mean, that's unique to us. No one else can claim that. And it's about joining a long legacy of history, and certainly where the sport was invented to now trying to be at the top of it, hundreds of years later. I mean, that's a pretty significant full circle moment for us. And that's a big part of why we're able to attract the sort of elite student athlete that we are able to. I mean, obviously Smith in general is an incredible institution with a lot of opportunity, and we play in a region where there's a lot of really good competitive basketball. So due to all those factors, we're able to attract a great pool of prospects. But I will say, being a women's college, and we feel pretty much the spotlight of the school, and that's something unique. I mean, I think that's really validating for our women to be a part of that. You can just come to the game on Saturday and see, it's a packed gym. There's no room. There's no more room, and that's not an experience that female athletes get to feel all the time. So I think that, that's something we have a lot of pride in too. And, this community, I mean, we earn it, we work hard, and we're good. Like we said earlier, we only lost one game out of 29, right? So, we work for it, but the community really shows up for us. And that's a pretty special partnership, and one we don't take for granted in our program.
That's fantastic. Smith College head coach Lynne Hersey, as well as the director of athletic and recreation at Smith, Kristin Hughes. Congratulations once again. We're all rooting for you here in the 413 that Smith goes all the way to the Final Four and takes home that championship.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
Come to the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds like a plan. I know Bart Rankin, our engineer, was there on Friday night. He's giving us the thumbs up. So, yeah, it's an excellent thing to go do. Tomorrow on the show, a queer-friendly, literal underground nightclub. We'll talk to Ange Buxton about taking over 10 Forward in Greenfield.
Amy Traverso, food editor for Yankee Magazine, will be joining us at the NEPM Wine and Food Lovers Weekend, and she'll join us on the radio tomorrow.
And we'll help kick off Massachusetts Maple Month at Maple Corner Farm in Granville.
Our director is Tony Dunn, accidentally down with the sickness.
Our engineer is Betsy Cordes, intentionally up with people, specifically babies.
Our technical team is Kara Crashed Foster, Bart Rankin Roger, and Punk Rock Dubé.
Musical thanks to Spouse Happy Valley Guitar Orchestra, and Smith alumna Merrill Garbus of Tune Yards. I'm Monte Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. See you tomorrow in the Fabulous 413.